Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is industry.live. We are back with a new guest. Noureen Syed is here with us. She is the AI and data lead at IBM Consulting, and we're really happy and excited to have her today. She's going to be talking to us about agentic AI. Noureen, thanks so much for joining us. Could you introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me, Somek. My name is Noureen Syed, as you said. I'm a partner at IBM Consulting in the Canadian team, and I work within our Microsoft practice with clients that have a preference for Microsoft platform in the use of their data and AI implementations. And generally, the goal is not really the technology or the fact that it's data and AI, but we're trying to drive business transformation, make the business really achieve their outcomes and value through solutions that happen to be then coming to life via data and AI technology that's on the Microsoft platform. So that's what my core team's focus is. That's been the last 2 years. Prior to that, I've done a number of years at Microsoft Canada in strategy roles, product management roles, more client transformation facing roles as well. So just kind of bringing that all home in now core client implementations.
So, Noreen, what is agentic AI? We've been talking about that. We want to dive into it straight right now and differentiate between agentic AI and all the other things that are going on in the space right now.
For sure. I love the question. It's a great one. I have a tendency when I'm learning something new to kind of focus on what is it not or how is it different from what's already there. So for instance, the other common question folks might have heard is there's agentic AI and then is SaaS dead with agentic AI, right? And so I kind of asked myself the same question. And if you look at SaaS or certain event driven apps in the past, there's an event and there's some event driven logic. So that trigger this sort of events and then actions take place. And you might say, well, agentic AI is sort of similar. But maybe if we start off with like, what is an agent in general? And so at the foundation of AI agents, you have, it's kind of like a building framework. You have foundational large language models that are serving as sort of, if you will, the brain, enabling the AI to process and generate language or other forms of other modes of outputs. Then you could create tailored personas. So you could kind of set the tone of what the focus of that particular agent is, what behavior, what decision making style, and what is their unique personality, if you will. And then finally, you can kind of have them interact with other tools and integrations to empower them to automate tasks. Right, which you might say, okay, well, that's really similar to traditional automation. But now the difference kind of lies in when you have a perception or perceived thing happening for the agent. So it doesn't have to be necessarily an event. It goes into a reasoning and uses tools and planning to kind of make that happen through large language models. And then it formulates the follow on action. It's also constantly learning. So if you compare it to traditional sort of SaaS, what's happening is the SaaS provider puts out a particular version and then they've got to make improvements. Whereas your agent could be learning really on the fly or will continuously kind of learn as you give it more inputs and as you ask, but you can kind of bound the scope of it by giving agent, this is your personality or function or actions that you're limited to performing. I hope that's a helpful layman's term explanation.
It is. So, my next question would be, how are people going to use it? Where do they access it? How do they build it? What are some of the basic things they need to know before they sort of decide whether or not to reach out to someone to help them build an army of agents for their business?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. It all comes down to value for money as well. At the end of the day, that's a core of any decision for a business. And it's one of those where you could definitely use an AI agent for anything and everything. Should you use it is sort of the question that I would start off with. And it's more about, can it use traditional automation? There's a lot of things that I think in business world are still, we went through a digital transformation era, and I'm not sure if that has ended, although the AI has started. There's still a lot of things that happen by paper. If you look across the companies you interact with, certain examples in organizations we work in, is simple act of like receiving invoices and things like that. Now, they might be digital in the sense they are no longer on a physical piece of paper and they happen to come in an email or things like that. But then how you action the keying or the data entry might still be manual. And so that's an element where you could automate. Does it necessarily needs to be agentic? That's where you need to start to make a call of, and is that needed? And the other thing is, in order to deploy an agentic AI solution, there's other considerations that you need to look at as an enterprise or any organization, which is you're generally going to need to have an orchestration layer that can orchestrate between all the different types of agents you've kind of deployed. You might have a catalog of native agents that you're purchasing from the industry, if you will, because they're going to be offered by various providers. And then you might have your own sort of custom agents that you developed to deal with processes within your organization. And then the orchestrator is really trying to kind of bring that all together to figure out who's the right agent to be utilized, how they should be executed. You're going to want to have some governance because although they're developing and evolving on their own, how are you going to ensure that agents comply and kind of follow compliance or processes boundaries? And so you're going to have monitoring and governance. And I think we've hit that in every era of technology advancement, right? When came the servers, it was like server sprawls. Then going to the cloud, and it was like, oh my God, cloud cost control. Because should you just pick up, and move everything to the cloud? It's garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. If you just lifted and shifted without modernizing for the cloud or the elasticity it offered, or not if every workload required elasticity, did you need to kind of move it to the cloud? You had all those questions. And I kind of bring those as examples. It's the same sort of questions to ask this time around. Is the agent going to provide you an edge? And I would think of it like a spectrum is the final point I would make. At the low end, you've got automation, right? Or is it even you could start with, is it a build versus buy decision kind of thing? And on the higher end, you've got some sort of AI. It could be traditional AI, generative AI, agentic AI, but it is really that spectrum. And you're kind of making a call along that spectrum on what your particular use case in terms of value, savings, productivity, efficiency is going to provide against the cost of investing in building something like that, which is going to take from your resources.
So, considering businesses have already leveraged automation in all of the ways that it can, considering that has happened, what are some of the basic entry points to agentic AI that you see? So, basic use cases, or like you said, native AI solutions that they can buy from the market versus, sort of building and creating their own. What are some of those use cases you see?
Sure. We've got a plethora of use cases, at least within the consulting practice, that my team and I kind of take to clients that we see have repeatability in application across industries. So I'll kind of share a few examples. One of those is in a software development lifecycle practice. And the reason why that's become valuable is you have agents that can play the persona of a BA, right? And a use case story writer and also a tester of sorts, if you will. Now, the code could be generated, modernized. Maybe you're kind of giving it old code. And specifically, this is coming in handy for like legacy code application modernization, where you no longer have either expertise or developers in market that can provide you that skill set and read the old code and help transfer it to the next. And it's huge manpower and effort, human effort to kind of do so. The other application could be the application is just antiquated and legacy enough where there's no good documentations around it as well. And so you're kind of looking at actually generating some of that documentation to even let the humans kind of help work with that. So that one's a really good example because if you think about it, traditional AI, it's like, oh my God, we don't need people anymore. AI can do everything. Well, here's a case where you don't have people that can actively have the skill set to work with it. So you're leveraging the brain power of the AI to help you take this legacy, help you modernize it in a more cost efficient way because maybe it's a business critical application. You can't just retire it. But it's also very legacy, and in order to support and maintain it's very, very expensive. And so you're trying to modernize parts of it and take it to a better outcome for your business. So that's another application. The other one that I'm seeing really good value for clients is if they have processes that have documents that need to be digitized, ingested into the cloud, but then information needs to be extracted out of there. So a data extraction scenario, if you will, and then actions need to be taken on that data, right? So whether it's processing of applications for something, from banking to insurance to even government applications, right? And it can, again, here you can kind of go with, if it's an online portal, then that information is already coming digital. Where the data extraction AI really comes in valuable is if you have information that are in PDF documents, handwritten, scanned in, and now you need to be able to accurately extract that data and perform actions and input it and hopefully replace some sort of a manual process. What are you going to get to 100% on that? Probably not. But what you're going to be able to do again is probably save 60 to 70% of the and automate that much processing. You still might have some errors, or the 30% that are left over, 25, 30, might still require manual touch and intervention. And then the freed up time or the resources that are freed up could again go to a higher value work. So you're really trying to take away, at the end of the day, anything that has strong like manual labor, manual data entry, manual actioning. Those are the types of tasks, if you think about, they're very, in our day jobs, they're the administrative part of our roles. And the more we can reduce and automate those things into automation, agentic AI, is where we're going to get bang for our buck for going towards this AI movement.
Thank you so much for, sort of those three use cases that you talked about. Obviously, SDLC and the next one are more niche. Let's talk a little bit more about digitizing documents. What a lot of companies can, be doing is digitizing documents. It really would be helpful to them. For example, if a condominium management company uses, an agentic AI solution to digitize documents which they get in terms of applications, in terms of requests, move-in requests, in terms of, processing KYC, all of those things can be supported by this agent. Would it be possible for you to give a simple idea of what the architecture would look like and talk a little bit about, for a certain volume of transactions, what those costs would be, or what, just how businesses should think about the magnitude or the quantum of what they are making in terms of investment, and of course the time it would take to set something like this up.
Sure. Okay, we'll take an attempt at it. I love the question. I think at the base, sort of from an architecture perspective, there is, they're sort of just taking all the documents, and if you have them already stored in an online form, that's great. But you are doing it a one-time ingestion into some sort of a cloud platform to allow you to then read from these documents. The next sort of step that's going to be really key is you want to use a good optical character recognition, or we call OCR, a cloud service. And this one really matters because certain services will have less accuracy rates. Certain services, a cloud provider might have really, really invested in being great for certain use cases, certain industries. And if they're doing their own LLM training to read, then you kind of benefit off of that versus having to, anytime, a lot of the effort can actually go into training. And if you look at traditional AI and why that was sort of a bit of a barrier to adopt, because it required teams of huge data scientists, a lot of training effort. LLMs kind of reduce that training effort and bring you large pre-trained large language models. And so really that is the benefits. Anytime you have to take on custom training, you're now no longer reaping the benefits of a large LLM, or unless it's really required and you're going to reap those benefits in your outcomes. So I think that's sort of the second model, which is the system needs to be able to then read and extract, and then think about some sort of a UI or infrastructure that really allows you to review the extracted data and apply either business rules against it right there to kind of start actioning. And so you might have application logic, APIs, integration with your existing other systems or applications to start actioning the data that's been read off. Normally, the component maybe that a human would take from inputting data and reading off and actioning, right? So that's sort of at a very high level, the architecture. The components kind of go between web services to OCR to the actual initial ingestion. In terms of costing, what I would say is generally it's dictated by the volume you want to process. And so it's the volume of documents, per documents, how many pages, and that matters in the cost you're going to incur on the cloud versus if there's any custom logic, or if you're going to a provider who has custom intelligence built in that makes it better than what a native solution offers. All of those things are going to create a cost for you. And so the more you have estimates on like your volume of processing per year, per month, it's going to help you kind of figure out, okay, well, how do I predict what that cost is?
Yeah.
So that's it. And in general, what I would say is from a one-time cost, it could be a little expensive to put that down. And you're probably looking at starter anywhere. And I'm now talking for Canadian customers, general solutions, they could be like, $500,000 to $700,000 just to kind of put the base infrastructure with, call it MVP, minimum viable product type of capability. Here, a lot of the customizations come in is these base systems, they're not user friendly, right? It's okay for an IT team to work at it and look at it. But as soon as you want like a user, a business user to interact, so you end up incurring some costs in UIs that you want to kind of develop in as well. You also want to have some costs probably for any other customizations of business processes. Like the more business logic and ruling that you've got to add into it, the more scenarios you're handling. Where you can start getting benefits really and economies of scale is you could build it once to handle, let's say, a certain scenario for your finance department or somebody. Now you can onboard other scenarios across the organization that also use some sort of documentations. And that's really because you can leverage the same infrastructure and just keep adding business logic. Now you're probably going to get more use out of that same core system. Continues to become more critical in terms of support as well. The more things rely on it, but you're really reusing it. And so that's what we often recommend to clients is, hey, like that's one use case. What are some other ones? Because that's really when it's going to become more valuable for you.
Okay, so that's very, very helpful for us to understand what agentic AI really is, how it works, and also some of the basic costs associated with it. Having spoken about cost, do you think, if a company has to sort of start moving into this direction? So I'm talking about all of the, thousands of mid-sized businesses in Canada and the US who have enterprise Microsoft licenses, who are, using a lot of the features that Microsoft provides, whether it's Power BI, whether, having those data lakes, having information, ready, having people in the business who know technology and understand technology, but at the same time, they're not, obviously the largest of customers in the world. For them, what would be the ideal way to get onto this agentic AI bandwagon? Because obviously it's going to help them reduce cost, make sure things are more efficient, reduce human error. So the benefits are there, tons of benefits, and those benefits are often long-term benefits. So in the short term, to get into AI, what would be the best journey?
The way I often guide customers to kind of make a decision on how to get into the agentic AI journey, whether they're a small client or a large multinational, it really doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, you have to approach it from a strategic standpoint. So I always often ask, like, does your C-level have an AI strategy? It doesn't need to be specific to agentic AI because that a broader AI strategy. And the reason that needs to be there is somebody collectively needs to decide how are we going to approve AI projects moving forward? And a simple requirement at the very base could be things like all AI projects must add to our bottom line. So either it's like a sort of a cost control, or it must add to revenue, customer experience, enhancing customer experience, etc. When you make that strategic AI decision, then it becomes really easy when the use cases come up going, well, this is an internal one. Okay, well, it's not a revenue adding, customer experience enhancing. That's a no, right? And so you need sort of that as the initial high level leverage to say yes or no. The second one I would say is it's really hard to kind of boil the ocean. You don't want to say, well, what are things that we can tackle across the organization? While in theory that sounds like great, find a repeatable solution that can be applied across the organization, it's hard to get all of these cooks in the kitchen lined up and kind of approach that and get moving. And so you're going to get analysis paralysis. You're going to have competing requirements, might have like a small percentage that's common and everyone's going to want to do their separate thing. So ideally really start off with the brand strategy on what is worth an AI investment for your company and then use that. The second one is anybody you're talking to, any consulting companies you're bringing in, any advisories, trusted advisories, contractors, ask them for what is a acceptable, repeatable use case for your industry, your sector. And the reason you can do that is maybe you're looking for an inspiration. Like you're thinking, okay, AI could be really applied to anything and everything. So I'm looking like a little bit of inspiration on what other companies are doing at minimum. And then I can apply again my AI strategy to see does it pass the test, and that's one that I could try. The last part of the strategy, and maybe this seems like very common sense in layman terms, but it makes a big difference if you approach it like that, is to know that it's going to be an iterative process. You don't have to get everything perfect the first time out of the gate. Aim for an MVP. Put something in place. If you're one department or one team or one business line of business successfully puts out an AI project that wasn't expensive, that was on time, and earn them some sort of productivity, revenue, or cost savings gain, and they were able to change the way they work with the AI, you're going to create that as your champion department and inspire the other ones to follow through. And that same department is likely going to have more use cases as well. But that's a good way to kind of unlock AI because at the end of the day, the tooling and the implementation and the project itself is only one component, but the people and process part of it Like, what are people going to do differently? How are they going to interact with AI? Maybe they're used to doing things manually, and now you're actually asking them to change the way they work. So there's a component of change management. And almost, it's not like, oh no, things are changing and people hate change, but the change management in a positive way. So you need to also take your organization along in the journey, get them AI trained, get them comfortable using AI for their day to day, and see how much do they want to use versus not use. And all of these things need to kind of happen in tandem, which, at least at IBM, we kind of do really well through hackathons.
Speaking of hackathons, you recently participated in a hackathon co-hosted by IBM and Microsoft. I saw that on your LinkedIn posts. Can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure, yeah. So every year, IBM Consulting's Microsoft practice and our global Microsoft strategic partnership team runs a hackathon with Microsoft in partnership. And this year's theme was Agentic AI. So generally, the goal is that, it's open to IBM internal teams, Microsoft teams, and jointly with our clients as well. I think we had a really overwhelming response. We had about like 900 participants and some 200 prototypes submitted. And the prototypes can be anything from like actual working AI agents to conceptual sort of ideation on it. And really what we're looking at, it was a way to, through the hackathon, clients and the teams are kind of provided licensing for Copilot agent, building Copilot solutions on Microsoft platform and some Azure OpenAI licensing as well. And then they're provided a team of IBM Consulting folks to work with them, who are normally working with them in accounts to kind of ideate on a solution that the client might have been toying with. And so it's a great avenue to your point, the earlier question, how as an organization gets started is, let's say there's an AI strategy and an approved use case, but this is a way to just kind of in a sandbox, let's just sit down and do it. Like try it out, right? Because there's going to be no perfect solution you can launch. It's going to have some mistakes. You have to have tolerance that AI is not going to be perfect. I think we have really high expectations that AI is going to come take over everything and do everything day one. But in order to get it there, in order for it to bring the efficiency and the promise of value that the industry says it does, you have to start working with it. And so the hackathon was a great means to encourage clients, internal practice employees to really work together with Microsoft to do that.
Can you share some insights on some of the prototypes that people made or interest that people showed in terms of what are the kind of things that they want to build or problems that they're trying to solve, challenges that they face? Anything you can share from the hackathon would be really exciting.
For sure, yeah. So that we had we actually had recently a webinar about this as well to kind of just recap the success and bring on a few clients that had winning prototypes and solutions, if you will. So one of them was the State of New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. They developed an agent called Checkmate, and the goal of Checkmate was to address the challenge of traditional data entry for the State of New Jersey's Department of Community Affairs mobile workforce. And so, such as folks that kind of do code enforcement inspections and promote public safety. And so in this forum, which was, and again, it's the modality as well, right? That makes AI interesting. So this was a combination of like the solution being built with Microsoft's Azure AI and then integration into Dynamics 365 and Power Automate some low code, no code to kind of do some of the automation. So it's really, there's some automation in there. There's some agentic AI. And what Checkmate allowed users to do is they could kind of take real-time findings, and then they could kind of input those in, and then there was speech to text functionality that was taking that in, and during the interaction, Checkmate the app was able to take spoken input from the inspectors, analyze it, and put it against like a code book and other data elements that was private to the department, and then recommend either citations or other courses of actions based on what the inspector was kind of logging in as what they were getting in their interactions. So like once the inspection sort of completed, the agentic AI then would kind of take elements, intent, context recognition, and create an inspection record of it, even in the Dynamics 365 inspector log. So sort of case management scenario. But it took that sort of a start to end experience. And again, if you look at it, now you have inspectors that normally go out, probably take stuff down on a paper or a laptop, probably used to input it, email it to somebody, log it into the system themselves. Now their whole workflow really got changed by being able to speak. And so you could kind of say, are they able to handle more cases? Are they able to capture maybe better details? Because now it's sort of a transcription from their speech versus ability to, scribe faster as someone's kind of talking or sharing stories with you. So all of these things, and I think that's the tricky part as well, just to kind of call out, is we can implement these solutions, but some of the value is a little hard to quantify and put dollars on. And so in this case, someone would really have to have a baseline of inspection cases they were able to handle before and what they're able to kind of handle after with this productivity gain. Are the inspectors able to go consult and review compliance with more people as a result of sort of reducing the administrative part of their day?
That is a very good use case that you talked about, and in the public service domain. But are there other business use cases? Do you see interest in particular industries more than others?
In the participation that we had, the two winning were at least both within a public sector client. There was another one that we had, which was within the state of Arizona's Department of Child Safety as well. But in sort of the broad 200 prototypes that came in, we had all sorts of clients that kind of participated and looked at scenarios. And so in the private sector, it is a lot around some of the use cases that we're seeing. It's either within the areas of, you could kind of like the operations teams. So sometimes HR, sometimes handling of even IT tickets, like we kind of see that as a scenario that comes up. And then the ones that are client facing, marketing, sales, etc., those ones are interesting and unique because they don't sometimes require custom agents yet. Or I think folks are exploring because there's also I talked about build versus buy. And so some clients are in sort of that decision making on, do we have an existing system that now has agentic native solutions that we should integrate and then we build custom agents around it? Or do we need to build something ground up? And so I think some organizations are also in the process of sort of figuring that out right now.
That's very exciting. From your perspective, what do you think AI and AI agents will look like in the next couple of months? What is the kind of implementation you see of AI agents? Do you see mid-sized businesses sort of investing in?
For sure, yeah, it's a bit always a bit of a pendulum, as I've observed in the past sort of historical moments. And so you have certain clients that continue to, if you will, on the adoption curve, really sit on the, they're going to be the laggards and just sit there and wait. And definitely not a good box to be in because you always kind of risk being out competed. There is sort of going to be the early adopters. And I think the only thing I would kind of caution to the early adopters is don't swing too far to the right. So we've kind of seen, I don't know if you've noticed in the news, like organizations like Klarna and others, which downsized a whole bunch of agents and says in their customer service, it said, we're all going AI. And then they only to come back and rehire a few because they thought they swung a little too hard into just AI handling all their customer service calls in the call center. And so I think the key message is in these trends is don't be on either extreme. Don't say you're not going to adopt until it's all safe and done because it's never going to be. It's an evolving landscape. And don't just say we're going to replace everything and just do AI only. Those are the extremes. Be somewhere in the middle, start small, pick a use case or two, start implementing, and definitely make sure your goal, like if you're a client right now who hasn't, if you're an organization that has not done anything AI, I'd get on that one right away. And then, I mean, also the other thing is you might be surprised as a leadership team, you may not be AI anyways. And there could be projects grounds up that have been kind of coming up and someone's experimented, built out something as a pilot. So the other thing you can do as an organization is probably run hackathons within your own organization to ideate and come up and kind of look across and decide to promote, if you will, kind of have a similar hackathon theme where someone wins their prototype and gets funding to bring it to life. And that could be a great way to, again, get moving and continue moving. And at minimum, I would ensure there's AI literacy across your organization. I bring that up as a trend because I think we are going to see AI literacy be a common trend that everybody has to upskill and learn how to work with AI. There's sort of a quote that is, AI is not going to replace humans, but it will replace anybody that doesn't learn to work with AI. And so I think that's a key theme of all the trends if we look across.
Um, AI and AI models often are known to hallucinate. How do you see that being protected against in the business use cases? Obviously, aside from governance models, just on the fundamental level, what are some of the things that people can do, are doing to protect against that?
For sure, yeah. And I think fundamentally, actually, something there that is really important is AI should not replace your critical thinking. So the other thing is there is sort of, I'll say this openly, there is a risk of overuse of AI. if you're just going to lean on it left, right, center, or if you're new to an industry, like learn your fundamentals, know your subject matter expertise, and use the AI to make you more productive, but don't use it to replace your critical thinking. Besides the long-term effect on humans and sort of their abilities and cognitive behavior, I think what's important is that will allow you to see things like hallucination. So if you use the AI in a context of, let me kind of use it to make me more productive, make me more efficient, you will always kind of hold the keys on, does that look right to me? And then in terms of the measures that where you can kind of reduce that is either improve your prompting, right? So you kind of really kind of give it like a box, like, hey, you're an experienced designer or you're an experienced marketer, and now you're writing out a sales ad and you need to be conscious of conflict of interest, etc. Like the more you kind of give it parameters, the more it's going to be a little narrow and less likely to hallucinate because you're actually telling it where to go look for information. The other one, when it comes to agentic AI, is again, we talked about persona. So in the agentic AI world, you limit what the function of that agentic AI is. The agent is either a BA role, they're either a technical expert, they're either a project manager, they're either a developer. And when you give it scope, again, you're kind of telling it how to look at and where to look at in terms of their expertise. And it's less like if it's only kind of looking at this is my domain of expertise, it's less likely to hallucinate because it's now not going to mix context. But at the end of the day, to reduce hallucination, you're trying to help it understand the context better. And it's, again, I mean, not a very great example, but I'd say for humans, it's the same. If someone joins you mid conversation, they're unaware of context, they could just hear words and literally try to add to that conversation and not make sense based on the words they've heard. But if they were aware of the context, they could more intelligently add. And I think you want to enable your AI to do the same for you.
One of the things you mentioned was AI literacy. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of what are some of the things that professionals right now can do to become more AI literate? And what are some of the things that young people can do to become AI literate?
Okay. Yeah, I would say starting with the professionals, take your AI fundamentals courses, ask your own organization if they're making any investments. And then I always kind of use the rule of 70, 20, 10. So 70% of your knowledge is going to come from doing and actively working with something. 20% comes from others and 10% comes from academics. So don't rely on your AI literacy course to be the start and finish. If you go through a course, it tells you what AI is, you understand the fundamentals. Perhaps you pick a particular platform that you're going to be working with. The courses might be different. Like if you're an IT professional, you probably need to, take course versus if you were an end business user, you might need to understand AI for financial services or AI for a business user or AI for this industry and how you can utilize it. But either way, take sort of that course as the inspiration and then really just use it in your day to day. One caution I would make for professionals is please consult your organization to see what's sanctioned to be used and allowed. You do not want to be using a public system with private company data and feeding that into like a free chat GPT because now you're funneling out your private information. And I kind of follow the same rules. Although I love playing with tools, I have sort of the boundaries on what's a personal project and experimentation used with organizational allowed AI tools. So that would be for the professionals. For the students, I would kind of say, in terms of learn the expertise you are learning in your professional, in your, campus life. Go learn the subject you're learning. And actually, another great thing you can do, if you want to become great at something, there's two things you do. You either take it upon yourself to go teach it to somebody else, because now you really got to learn the concepts to be able to reiterate and make others explain and understand, or you decide to critique it. Same thing. In order to criticize something, you need to be a bit of an expert or have enough understanding to know what you're going to call out as a relevant point of improvement or change. And so that's what I would encourage students to do is understand your concepts enough to determine either using AI to critique your work, to or to learn it enough to be able to teach it to somebody else. When you do to those two functions, it's going to help you use it in a right way. And actually what it does is it innately helps you retain your critical thinking, which is, I'd say, the utmost importance, right? There's a lot of students, and I have a younger sister and a son as well. And, they don't want to use it to write up the verbiage or an essay or a paragraph. Because one, they also get a little bit of a feeling of, I didn't create that. So if someone commends it or if I get marks, it's almost like kind of creating that, it's feeding their imposter syndrome. going, well, if somebody's saying that's great, but I didn't create it, like that doesn't feel great either. So, but if they augment it or they say, help me phrase this better, or can you give me a framework? I'm trying to write an essay about XYZ. How should I frame it? Or can you give a construct? And then they get to fill in their inputs into that framework. That's a better use of AI for them. So I hope those examples kind of help.
Definitely, definitely. So, my last question would be just in terms of businesses using AI. A lot of them have obviously started using ChatGPT, like you said. They've tried out DALI and image generation. They're trying out video generation. Aside from that, how do you think they can basically, take it to the next level? What are some of the things that they need to, do now? Do they really need to hire technology leaders, data specialists, and scientists for that, or can they leverage the connections they have with teams that manage their accounts within technology companies that they deal with, so vendors and other specialist organizations?
Yeah, and I think maybe I'll start off with your last one, whether you hire somebody or you work with folks. I would say you definitely need to kind of build some in-company skills. It's really important to not just outsource that unless that's your business model or that's not core to your business and you really want to outsource. But if you have any sort of IT and functions within your organization, you will definitely want to continue to kind of build that as well. The other one in terms of like, then where do you start? Maybe what I can kind of cover with you is a little bit of like there's these successful pillars that, IBM has kind of observed where enterprises that want to scale and work broadly with AI, there's these things, if they do these 5, 6 things successfully, they tend to have a higher ROI of their AI projects. And it kind of boils down to like 6 different capabilities, which is, and one of those we talked about is we want to have a bit of a vision and strategy. So you want to be, you want to identify where is the AI going to boost our competitiveness, provide innovation, or help us, add to the bottom line or generate revenue or customer experience, and then prioritize accordingly. That's sort of one. You do want to take a look across the data and technology. So you want to have core capabilities. A lot of the AI is going to provide power to you based on your separate data sources. Those data sources are already there. They're within your HR systems, they're within your client relationship management systems, they're within your core business systems, but it probably lives in different spots today. And so you actually want to just kind of even do some data foundational activities to make sure that your core capabilities of simplification, cleaning of data, automation, control, and secure access to that data is in place. Then you can kind of look at, we also touched on talents and skills. Do you have an enterprise-wide approach to how to develop and work with AI? Are you looking at AI ethics, almost retraining talent, not just looking to hire? Because again, if we all go to market to hire, well, nobody's done AI and we're all kind of doing it together. I think we have a big responsibility to help retrain and reskill people for AI. And then you can, as needed, look to hire a subject matter expert or a key technical architect, et cetera, from the industry as needed, right? The other thing is then you're going to start, as you start to delve into AI products, you're going to kind of look to have a couple of other things, which is start creating an AI operating model. And in that operating model, you might want to say, okay, well, here's how the basis of it is going to be. Here's, the tooling that we could kind of repeat. Here's processes every time in terms of, ways of working, policies, guidelines, governance, all of those things will kind of get established. And you actually, the other thing that's really core to any AI is the user. And so you want to make sure that you have the users that are going to be working with that AI be a core part of development. Like, how are they going to work? What is currently their process workflow? What is the to be experience? What capabilities and workflow automation you're going to kind of bring to them? And so those are experience design user things. And then the last one is really kind of bring it together is formulating an AI engineering and operations practice. So how are you going to deploy AI solutions? How are you going to make it user friendly? How are you going to make it scalable, reusable? Almost having like a bit of an AI center of excellence within your organization. Now that's for a large organization, but even for any small company, you want to make sure there's a repeatable process. Because if every AI project is going to be like, let's start at the base and like you over time, you want to have a bit of synergy and economies of scale coming. And so your first project it'll be the most expensive. Your second one might be less expensive and so on and so forth. Eventually, you want to start formulating some best practices and keep feeding back the learnings into each new AI project that you have.
Sounds really good. And that's very neatly packaged. I think I've covered off all the points that I wanted to. But before we go, would you have any tips, tricks, best practices for companies or professionals looking to survive the AI race?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of it. So, Mike, you asked some great questions. I think it's just don't be an extreme company. Don't think everything else can be solved with AI. Don't think that you're going to wait it out for someone else to figure it out. And lastly, really treat it like a spectrum. So you don't have to just do AI because everybody is doing it. Please be intentional. I think really, question the value, question the use case scenario, but also trust, your users who are working in the workflows and processes. And if they maybe share your strategy and vision with them on how you see AI playing a role in your organization, and then allow them to submit their ideas, encourage some ideation. This is not a challenge or a problem, just for leadership to tackle. You really want it to be, and that ends up driving a cultural movement around acceptance and usage of AI. And that's what really AI is. It's culturally and market wise. And for people, it's really shifting the way we work and interact with technology. I think the last such shift was maybe mobile devices and smartphones, right? They really changed the way we manage our days and how digital we became. Well, now it's time for AI to do that. And so you can almost, yes, the technology is new, but you can almost rinse and repeat the last time we had to kind of work with such game changing technology.
All right, thank you so much. It was really great having you, Noreen, and it was very informative. We learned a lot. I'm going to wrap this up now.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again.
All right, thank you.